Every year, plus or minus, we have to do a auction breakdown, not necessarily auction results. We do that as well in terms of what the market is doing in individual segments, but the auction platforms themselves. And SBX, the hypercar, supercar, whatever you want to call it, well, I suppose we should call it what they call it, but I think it's a supercar platform. Anyway, they've just celebrated 1 year. And I thought that was a good opportunity to take a look back at kind of our predictions based on when they first launched. I remember we covered them, I think, last summer. And at the time, they had sold like 6 cars, and 3 of them were Tesla Cybertrucks. So
yes,
that wasn't a super good outlook, in my opinion, but everybody's got to start somewhere. But while we're doing that, we'll give you some updates and talk about the numbers on a whole bunch of auctions. Tyler, who was our research assistant this week.
As this guy.
Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's Aaron, sometimes it's Dan Doucette. But anyway, he's got some great numbers to, pit these auction houses against each other to see what the results actually look like.
Well, and I think this is very interesting to look at across a bunch of different auctions, but I think we should all remember as we're talking about these that they all have slightly different markets. And so they are not entirely equivalent, but it is interesting because we hear about a lot of these all the time. There's always cars listed to kind of see, what does the data say about their performance?
Right. And these numbers are, as we have essentially parsed them out, most of them come from a website called classic.com. So they may not be entirely accurate. We are reporting this and analyzing it as we've received the data. So don't take this as gospel, but I think it's pretty darn accurate. Obviously, Bring a Trailer is still top dog. They had way too many auctions to pull the data on, but I believe their published numbers are between 75 to 80% sell-through rate, which is a very impressive ratio.
Well, looking at some of these numbers, that's huge.
Yes. One thing they did last year that we talked about is they brought out the make offer feature, which is after the auctions ended, if it ends reserve not met, instead of connecting the buyer and seller to just let them work it out free of fees, they now have each person gets one counter offer. And if it's accepted, then the sale is recorded through the site. Bring a Trailer gets their fee, and then they put the winner in touch. Initially, I said, this is a great idea. I don't like it. Having used it now, we have a much lower, we used to have about a 50% rate of close with either the high bidder or another underbidder on Bring a Trailer with reserve not met sales. But often it was actually a different bidder because the high bidder I feel like there was always this attitude of, well, I'm the high bidder, so obviously the market spoke, so why would I pay more than my bid? And it's like, well, no, it's just that's what it was today. So a lot of times underbidders would contact us because our name can be found easily, right? You can Google SwitchCars and find us. Private sellers can't do that. But anyway, we would have about a 50% ratio of selling to an underbidder or high bidder of reserve not met. With this new scenario, it's much lower than that. I think maybe we've closed one.
Does it let anybody submit this make offer?
Only the high bidder. Only the high bidder.
Interesting.
Yes, which I understand. That encourages people to bid. Like, you should bid as if you want to win.
Yes.
You don't want to hedge your bets like people used to do with eBay, because eBay would publish reserve not met. So people just, I'm not going to bid because the reserve's not met. So I understand why BAT does it. I just don't like it from a buyer and seller perspective. Let's see, Cars and Bids, which is pretty much number 2 in the space, has laid off some of their staff. Everybody's like, oh my gosh, things are up in arms. Well, they laid off their business development department, but
would you consider their business is pretty well developed at this point?
Probably. And if you ask a lot of car dealerships, they call it the BDC, Business Development Center. They can't, no salesman on the planet can stand the BDC, right? They're basically just metrics, right? They're setting appointments for salesmen. They're, well, why didn't you close them? Your metrics suck, you know? So it's like people that aren't really in sales being this intermediary that arguably doesn't need to be there. So the new CEO, Dan, is a customer of ours, and we had a great call. He called me and said, "Hey, what can we do better? What's your honest opinion? Don't hold anything back."
I like that.
On how we're doing, how we can improve. Which I said, well, honestly, we've only done like 2 auctions on your site, so I appreciate you wanting to ask me. But I gave him an earful of what they're doing well and what, I had a strong opinion on a few things. But listen, they're still number 2.
Do you think that if
not a bad place to be.
some of these changes were potentially implemented, that you would choose to list more cars there if
Sure.
it made sense?
Yeah, we are actually running a car on there shortly. We've got a Volvo C70. I think typically the cars we're selling are a better fit for Bring a Trailer. Again,
That's
each
true.
auction has its kind of niche. This Volvo we're running is definitely a better fit for the Cars and Bids marketplace, in my opinion. I guess we'll see. Drive Down Cars was the auction platform that instead of bidding up, it would bid down, essentially. It would reduce the price every day until it got to their floor price. They're done.
Really? I liked that idea.
I did too. I really did.
And they had a ton of marketing. I don't know what it takes to, be successful in the car auction business, but I liked that idea of, if you want it, you have to make sure that you want it bad enough.
Right.
Like, it's not waiting to see what somebody else will pay. It's waiting for somebody else to just buy it out who's willing to pay more than you.
Yep.
So that feels more like market price type. I don't know. I liked it. It was a fun idea.
I liked it. They missed on a few things in terms of execution. They didn't start with a critical mass of cars for sale, which I think was a critical error. But it was a good site. It was good people running it. And I liked the idea. So I was bummed to see that one go down, but they can't all make it. Let's see. A bunch of sales, right? So Cars and Bids sold a couple years ago to a private equity. Bring a Trailer obviously sold to Hearst years ago.
Yes.
PCAR Market, I've heard a rumor that they've sold.
Oh.
So we'll wait to see if there's an official announcement. I don't know to whom or how much, or if the rumor's true, but let's see. MB Market also sold last year. The details are a little bit murky, arguably somewhat of a hostile takeover.
Oh.
But
Yikes.
Yes. Anyway, a lot of sales. It seems like that's the play, is you build up an auction platform and you sell it.
Well, I also think, in the online discourse around the Cars and Bids layoffs, which there was a lot of garbage in there about people that don't know how to run businesses. I don't know how to run a business, but I at least acknowledge that. I thought it was interesting that, we are entering, as we've talked a lot here on the podcast, a very interesting time in the car business, where in the last 5 years, I think there was a huge hunger for buying, or having a platform to sell cars at ever increasing sale prices. Correct. So now, if we're entering a period, we are in a period of market cool down pretty much across the board, I think.
Yes. Hagerty just released their market rating, and it was 50, which indicates a flat market. And they said it was the first time it's been in the 50s, I think, or below 60 since 2011.
That's crazy.
Yep.
So it's very easy. Not easy. I will say there is a market available for different ways to sell cars to different groups of people. And if there's a flat market, that just decreases. The demand decreases. So businesses have to change. And I think everybody who sold, is a genius. They did it at the right time.
Sold their auction platform or sold their car?
Well, no, sold their auction platform. Because I think, not to say that in 10 years, we're not going to be at a market of whatever Hagerty call 80 or whatever. I don't know what's going to happen. But I think in the short term, we're going to be in a bit of a tough spot for a glut of online ways to sell cars.
So let's look at the competition. We're going to highlight 6 of the not top ones, but 6 of the kind of competitors for that secondary market under Bring a Trailer. So we've got SBX, PCAR Market, Hagerty, Hemmings, Cars and Bids, and MB Market. We were not able to pull numbers from SOMO, which is Sotheby's Motorsport online platform, because of how they report stuff. But there is something interesting to note about SOMO, is they just announced that they have a sealed bidding auction platform coming soon, which kind of makes sense because RM Sotheby's is a much higher end clientele. So the sealed bid makes sense. And that's something different, obviously. And one of the advantages to this, they say, is there's no published result. So the future value of your car is not impacted by a published sale, which may or may not be accurate. We all know there's manipulation that goes on. There's inconsistencies. There's stuff that happens behind the scenes. And so published numbers are not always accurate. But here are the published numbers. Let's see. SBX. Now let's end with SBX.
All right.
Yeah. Cars and bids. Again, number 2 in the space.
I will say, too, the data we're talking about is pretty consistently within the last year.
Yes. Yeah.
Beginning of April to mid-April of 24 until, like a week ago.
Cars and bids is a clear leader here. 138K approximately in 138 million. Sorry.
I say, that's not a lot of
138 million in disclosed or reported sales. 5,400 cars sold in the last year, average price $25K, so on the lower end of things.
But I feel like that's where Cars and Bids shine.
Yes.
It shines. Is the enthusiast interesting, but doesn't have to entirely engulf your wallet.
Sell-through rate, 76%.
That's nuts.
Very impressive.
Heck yeah.
Very impressive. Now, a lot of people will allege, we're dealing with facts here, not opinions, but a lot of people say Cars and Bids only wants reserves at wholesale. So yeah, I mean, they want a good sell-through rate. So maybe what we didn't compare here, because it was nearly impossible to do, is, well, where are their sales for models coming in versus BAT versus the open market? Like, to pull that data would be very, very tough. But you can't argue with 5,400 cars sold. Some of them are going to be below market, some will be above market, and some will be right at market value. Or they are determining the market, right? Who's to say? It's the market on that site on that day. MB Market, smaller player, Mercedes only, which I actually like. I wish more platforms were sticking to a niche and becoming an expert in it. I feel like you get better descriptions. If you're looking for an older or more obscure Mercedes, you just know, like, that's the place to go.
And I think that will allow them to weather any sort of storm. Like, I do think, I had just talked about how we're in a weird period where we might need to pare down. There's not as much appetite or demand. MB Market, I theorize, will remain a premier place to get your Mercedes products. So,
I wish PCAR Market had stuck to just Porsches, but whatever.
Yeah, now it's just Car Market, which
I feel like they should have changed their name a long time ago when they did away with added cars beyond Porsches. But anyway, MB Market, 3.9 million in sales, 147 sold, average sale price $26K, sell-through rate 45%, which I feel isn't too bad for a smaller market player.
I thought was interesting in compiling these statistics is, we think of 75% as a C because of grading and in school or whatever, but it seems like the sell-through rate is much lower than I would anticipate, but I think it kind of makes sense. A lot of the times you're just not going to reach the value on potentially that day or with the right people in the room. So I honestly think Cars and Bids 76% sell-through rate is nuts.
Yeah, it's very good. Very good. Hemmings, 16.5 million in sales, 755 sold, 1627 not sold, 31% sell-through rate for a big company. They bill themselves as the world's largest online marketplace. Average sale price $22K, probably a lot of muscle cars, the boomer specials. I think Hemmings' problem, and we have advertised on Hemmings, I think their problem is that they're trying to do too much. They have the make offer platform, the auction, and the classifieds, and they kind of tier them in terms of how they push that stuff. I think they need to consolidate. Maybe you have two, right? So Hagerty has the classifieds, the Hagerty Marketplace, and the auctions. And by the numbers, it's worked out way better for them. They have 20.3 million in sales over the last year, 833 sold, 24K average price, and a 68% sell-through rate. That's pretty darn good. That one surprised me.
What's interesting is Hagerty, Hemmings, MB Market, and Cars and Bids all have essentially the same average unit price per sold car.
You're right.
So there's really focused on a similar-ish price point, but I would think because I don't, obviously MB Market is focused on Mercedes-Benz. Cars and Bids is just about anything. Hemmings and Hagerty, I feel like, are maybe more muscle car. I don't know if Hagerty is. Hemmings is for
Classic car, I'd say.
Yeah. Because when I'm looking for the stuff that I'm interested in, I don't think I've ever ended up on Hagerty or Hemmings.
Correct. I do search Hemmings for stuff, but I honestly don't use Hagerty. It just doesn't come to mind. Okay, PCAR Market. Let's see, 53.2 million in disclosed sales.
Spicy.
Does that include their deal tank sales, or is that just auctions?
I believe this is deal tank.
Okay.
So it's everything.
Okay.
We should assume it's everything.
All right. That makes sense that it would include that. But a pretty abysmal sell-through rate, 27% sell-through, 675 sold, 1,777 not sold.
Well, and this aligns, obviously I'm focused on a very specific market of 996 GT3s, but that's what I have seen with that market is a lot of the listings are no sales with like crazy reserves or a crazy deal tank after the fact. And so it was interesting because I followed that so closely for the data to match kind of what I feel on a very, very specific slice of their overall market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the reason they have such higher overall sales, so they have less sold than Hagerty in terms of units, but their average sale price is almost $79K. They're in a different market there. And then SBX. Oh boy, this one was interesting to me. Their max unit sale, this is the supercar auction, this is the highest one of any, is $6 million. Their minimum sale is $98K. Total price of disclosed sales is $11 million. Their sell-through rate is a pretty weak 30%. Now, these number includes, right? So they say 33 are sold. Now, this is according to the classic.com data parsing. I went through manually to look at this as well because they sent out an email saying happy anniversary to ourselves, $100 million in cars. And I said, well, $100 million?
That's different.
That's not the number I have.
That's helping me get past the fact that you didn't trust my data, Doug. What the heck?
I think what they're saying, because they had 33 sold, 78 not sold. But also, if you look at their lot numbers, they've got about 109 historical listings. But their lot number at the time that we pulled this, their highest lot number currently was 284. So I think their lot number is all the submissions, I'm guessing, or they're using some funky numbering system.
Interesting.
So 100 million is either all the cars that are submitted or all the cars that went on their site but didn't sell. But either way, that 100 million number is incredibly misleading. Yes, 100 million in cars, but not in sales. Now, there were a number of sales that happened as disclosed on their site that said this vehicle sold privately after the auction. So it's reserve not met, so it wasn't included in their sale data. But when I reached out to them and said, hey, does this mean it sold to the high bidder, like you guys collected a fee, or you just noted that it sold to pump your numbers up? I did not receive an answer. That was a couple weeks ago, so we don't know. But best case scenario, worst case scenario, they have 4.6 million in sales that actually completed via the auction process. 4.6 million. That's very low. There was 11 that sold privately after the auction closed. So that's 37. Some of those did not disclose values, which is how we came to the 33 number, because when we download the data, that was including the ones that they disclosed a sale price. Now, I will say that the ones that said they sold privately were all multi-million-dollar cars. So that effectively like double or tripled their total sales.
Yeah, I think one of them was the like shooting brake old Aston Martin that is so cool.
Yes.
Like the old Vantage, or I'm butchering this, but whatever it was awesome.
Yes. But like if we say, well, I mean, there are only If they're doing, let's take what was the number here? 11 million in sales, 11 million at a 5% commission is $550,000 in revenue. That's not a lot for an auction platform like that. Like that might have paid back their website development costs.
Yeah.
The good thing is, and a lot of these companies are like this, is they've got nearly unlimited money backing them. So for a first year, that's not too bad. But sell-through rate, very, very low. Total sales in terms of numbers, quite low. But they're reporting a lot more.
Well, and I think, even in spite of that, like, I don't want to try to argue that there isn't some sort of rosy look at some of the numbers. I think SBX is trying to do something very difficult because you can see it in their average, per unit price, even without some of those big boys that were not disclosed. They are trying to break into a market that is extremely different from all of the other auction sites that we've talked about.
396,000, which is what I like about them. What did I like about MB Market? They are defining a market and saying, this is our niche. SBX is the supercar auction platform. I felt that they didn't do that last year because they were all selling Cybertrucks. So if they stick to this supercar auction platform and can pull it off, good on them.
And that's where, where we'll see things like the Aston Martin V8 Sportsman shooting brake is what I was talking about. Now, this was one that sold after. We don't know the price, like that, but that is some crazy stuff that probably wouldn't end up on really any of these other platforms. But I do think that by choosing a niche and by really focusing on what I would say is a difficult market that is really owned by the existing, like we'll call them brick and mortar auction houses that go to concours and go to events, they're really trying to forge a path. And I would like to see them be successful because I think successful in sticking with it rather than opening up and lowering their goals to accept more cars just to stay alive.
Despite how much we dogged them for their listing on that Ferrari last week.
I have complicated feelings, Doug. I think they need to maybe stop making things so rosy, but they're choosing a difficult path, which I think makes it easier for them to think they need to be very positive about things. Yep.
Last one, guyswithrides.com. I didn't realize this thing was still even around, but I got an email, I think it was on SportsCar Market, that they were advertising there a special. And I'm going to say it right now. The website kind of sucks, but the business model is completely unsustainable. They're basically like, where you're rejected by Bring a Trailer, will come here. And it's like, it's not a good start.
This is like the guy on the shady used car guy on the corner.
Looking for a safe alternative to Craigslist, eBay Motors, or Facebook Marketplace? What's Craigslist even?
Yeah, like I don't think I'd...
Just $1 to create a self-service auction. You can set your own reserve price. So I guess what they're doing here is they're hands off. So they're basically saying, oh, this is just free revenue. We don't have to do anything. We're not crafting the listings. But if a seller sets their own reserve price, that's a recipe for cars not selling. The reason Bring a Trailer and Cars and Bids has such high sell-through rates is they set the reserve. They tell the customer, this is what we think works, and the seller has to accept it. But that makes sure that cars sell because people always think their cars are worth way more than they are.
There are three. These are auctions ending the 24th, which was 2 days. What is even going on?
Nothing. Not much at all. So $1 to list. Let's see. No silly end of auction time extensions. Those aren't silly. A real auction, you keep it going until people stop bidding. Then you don't have the eBay proxy bid stupid crap that people hated. 1% buyer's premium capped at only $500. You can't make money that way. $1 to list and $500 max buyer's premium? No way. Oh, and no dealers, private party listings only. Well, you're eliminating a big portion of the market.
I love the Meekum calculator for them to say, here's how much it's going to cost to auction your car at Meekum.
They have 3 cars, a terrible ACA steel-bodied Cobra one-off replica. It's definitely a one-off. It looks like it was homemade. I don't want a one-off replica. I want a Factory 5 or Superformance or something made by somebody. A Fascioli pistol car, whatever that is.
No idea what that is.
And a Volkswagen Carmen Ghia.
They've got they listed in 2023 a Concours Caliber 996 C4S cab tip with aftermarket wheels.
How much did I get bid to? $5,000?
It said it sold locally.
Oh, so it didn't sell on their platform.
55,000 miles, modern style Fuchs wheels, and Tiptronic automatic are the selling points.
Yes.
Yeah, Concours quality for sure.
Oh, all right. Well, they're serving a market
Bailey
that
on
doesn't
here
need
that we need
served.
to send to him. What is a Cadillac Seville Opera Coupe? Yeah.
Sounds like it has a Landau roof,
It does.
a North Star engine, and front-wheel drive. 3 things that make a car a definite winner.
Oh, this is amazing.
All right, moving on to our segment, Things You Shouldn't Ask on the Internet. On Threads, which is an absolute dumpster fire of a platform. But let's see. Somebody says, which do I buy? My friend is a master mechanic at Toyota, and my other is a lead mechanic at the mini BMW dealership. Both are telling me that BMW will be more reliable and makes more sense to buy than the Corolla financially.
In what world?
Should I spend $30,000 on a Toyota Corolla or $35,000 on the BMW M340i? I hate that they put M in front of anything that's not an M. Both warranties will be the same. Is it worth a little more?
You missed out. The BMW B58 is my dream car, and it's only a few thousand more and verified to be more reliable.
Yeah, honestly, I titled this segment wrong. I think this is one he should ask on the internet, because if his Toyota mechanic and his BMW mechanic are telling him that the BMW is more reliable than a Corolla, he needs new mechanics. And hopefully seriously. That's what the internet told him. In what world is a BMW more reliable than a Corolla? No world. My wife, I sold her Corolla like 8 years ago without her permission, and every car since then, she's just like, I miss my Corolla. It never needed anything.
A buddy of mine had a Toyota Yaris that he put over 100,000 miles on and never had to do the brakes. It's not like he didn't want to. The mechanic said just, no, they're fine. They're made out of vibranium or something. I don't know what's going on.
Vibranium. Buy the Corolla. I don't know. Yeah. And find new mechanics.
And maybe think about your dream car again.
Reevaluate your goals in life.
So, Doug, I can't stop thinking about this Cadillac Seville Opera Coupe. I had no idea this existed, but like, look at this thing.
Oh my gosh.
It's like a really long 70s Cadillac that has just 2 doors now and a really long hood.
So you said Seville. I'm thinking like the newer one. I was like, man, Landau roof, front-wheel drive, North Star. That is a recipe for a winner of a car. How could you go wrong?
But this is amazing. They've got this Craigslist classifieds section on Guys with Rides, and it's like kind of what BAT used to be.
Yeah.
Like it's just random Craigslist stuff.
Yeah. They don't have as much traction as BAT, though. They have 3 listings on there. So $1 listing. They have $3 in verified revenue.
Not doing much with that.
I don't even think they need to file a tax return. This episode is brought to you by Sheffield All Sport Watches. The Sheffield brand was recently revived by Jay Turkbus, an owner of an original Sheffield All Sport diver he received from his parents in 1970 when he was just 11, beginning his love of watches. As an adult, Jay used his extensive expertise in product development and marketing to revive the brand that started it all. He set out to develop watches with a high level of quality and specification at a value price. His first effort, and a successful one in July of 2023, was the debut of the Sheffield All Sport Diver 1. It had the kind of build and movement that much more expensive watches use, and his debut price of $108 was equivalent to the $13 his parents paid back in 1970. Since that debut, Sheffield has expanded to a wider range of automatics and chronos, many designed around vintage Sheffield dials of the 60s. The Sheffield well of clever and unique design remains his inspiration, as well as maintaining the goal of high quality, very affordable range of automatic and quartz watches. Sheffield watches, value on merit, not just price. I love mine. Get yours at SheffieldWatches.com and mention that you heard heard about them on SwitchCast. Thank you for joining us for SwitchCast with Doug Tabbutt and Tyler Sanders, produced by Ethan Huffnagel. SwitchCast is an automotive entertainment and opinion show, and nothing we say should be taken very seriously. We do not give tax, investment, legal, emotional, or professional advice, and the only licenses we hold are driver's licenses. The opinions expressed on this show are exclusively held by the people pontificating at that moment and do not reflect the values of our producers or sponsors. Our theme music is provided by Emily and Ivory. You can stream their full album on Spotify or SoundCloud. If you like this show, you can stream it in its entirety on your favorite audio podcast platform. Check out switchcast.live for more info.